Galwaf yr cynulliad cenedlaethol I drefn ag ar gychwyn hoffwn groesawu Mariam Jack Denton, Llyfarydd Cynulliad Cenedlaethol y Gambia, sy'n arwain cynrychiolwyr ar ymweliad â'r cynulliad cenedlaethol heddiw, felly croeso Llyfarydd a'ch dirprwyaeth. Yr eitem gyntaf yn agenda ni yw'r cwestiwn brys dwi wedi dderbyn o dan rheol sefydlog 12.67 a galwaf yr Adam Price I ofyn y cwestiwn brys.
Diolch Llywydd. Pa gynlluniau mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi gwneud I ymateb I effeithiau diddymu Caerilion?
Diolch Llywydd. Ydym yn disgwyl ond ychydig o effaith uniongyrchol bydd diddymiad Caerilion yn codi yng Nghymru, bydd Llywodraeth Cymru yn gwneud popeth o fewn a'i gallu I helpu gweithwyr Caerilion yn effeithiau'r arnynt yma. Mae swyddogion Llywodraeth Cymru yn parhau I asesu unrhyw ganlyniadau pellach mewn sefyllfa sy'n parhau I ddatblygu'n gyflym.
Dwi'n ddiolchgar i'r ysgolhaig Cabinet am I ymateb. Dwi'n gobeithio allan ni gael chydig bach mwy o fanylion ynglyn rai o prosiectau penodol. Can you say whether any of the Welsh Government contracts awarded to Caerilion were awarded after July, the time of the first profits warning issued by the company? After the second and third profits warning in September and November last year, did the government discuss contingency arrangements with Aelodau'r in relation to Caerillion's role as the nominated contractor as part of their rail franchise bid? And can the Cabinet Secretary further advise us if there's now a material risk that Aelodau'r bid is effectively null and void, as it is in effect naming a nominated contractor that no longer exists and therefore rendering it liable to legal challenge? Finally, is the whole Caerilion experience, which has left so many smaller subcontractors and their employees carrying the can effectively for a large company's mismanagement and indeed reckless profiteering, does it give us pause for thought in our over-reliance still on externally owned contracting conglomerates for our civil engineering work? There must surely be a better way going forward.
Thank the member for what I take to be three main questions. In relation to contracts that the Welsh Government has, there is one contract, a contract in relation to the design phase of Junction 15 and 16 on the A55, which was awarded after the original warning about Caerilion in July of next year. At the point that that warning was issued, the procurement process was paused. Further assurances were sought from the company. Those assurances were received and risks that might have been involved were mitigated. No other contract has been awarded since July of last year. As far as Aelodau'r is concerned and the franchise arrangements there, I think there are a number of points which I should make. First of all, directly in answer to Adam Price's question, Transport for Wales, having seen the developments in July and during the autumn, have been involved in making sure that the necessary financial underpinning of bids is reliable, and they have been in discussions with Aelodau'r on that basis. In the immediate aftermath of events earlier this week, the Cabinet Secretary has taken legal advice so that we are clear as to whether there are any impacts from these developments for the franchise process. The company itself is taking action to make sure that it is in a position to go forward with a bid if it chooses that course of action. And the Welsh Government remains committed to a final outcome in the tender process, which leads to the improvement in services that people in Wales wish to see secured. The third question the member raised is the broadest one, of course. He will have seen, I'm sure, a piece in the Financial Times today called The Problem of Bigness, in which the author teases out the difficulties that occur for public contracting organisations in a market where there has been radical consolidation and the number of players in the field doesn't necessarily give rise to genuine competition. So that inevitably does come to the fore in the Cynulliad experience, and he's right to point to the fact that all public authorities that are involved in securing necessary services through going out to contract will want to review this experience, learn the lessons from it, and to make sure that public funds are not exposed unnecessarily in the future.
Russell George.
George Five. Cabinet Secretary, can I ask you about any work you've done or you're going to be commissioned in terms of the consequences of this company going into liquidation, in terms of the wider economic conditions that this is going to bring to the Welsh economy and especially small businesses. But can I also ask you, Adam Price has raised questions about the rail franchise, but can I press you a little bit more about the projects which may well be affected in Wales? You said there would be little effect to projects in Wales, but can I just press you a little bit more on that for some further clarification on which projects may well be affected? And can I also ask about projects in Wales that are perhaps about to be started or in the middle of construction that are not being, that perhaps are being operated or project managed by, not Cynulliad, but another company? I think of Newtown Bypass in my own constituency as an example, managed by Alan Griffiths contractors, but may well depend on suppliers for steel, for bridges or other project management consequences as well, and about what conversations you may have had with them in terms of how projects in Wales may be affected or be potentially delayed.
Thank you, Llywydd. Well, the member is right that while the direct exposure of the Welsh Public Service to Cynulliad is modest, that does not mean to say that there aren't businesses and subcontractors in Wales who, in the other aspects of Cynulliad's work, may now find themselves exposed as a result of Cynulliad's demise. So officials of the Welsh Government are carrying out the necessary work to try to identify where those difficulties may lie. We are in discussions both with the FSB and the CBI about that, and using the networks that the Welsh Government has across Wales, so that if there are difficulties that emerge of the sort that the member has identified, we are alert to them and are able to offer such help as we are able to in those circumstances.
There are Cabinet Secretary. There are obviously ethical and very practical issues, both of which I'd like to address. I mean, we know the history of Cynulliad. We've debated it in this chamber in terms of its anti-trade unionism, its blacklisting, and its attacks on terms and conditions of workers. And that's the model that's obviously contributed to its current downfall. And I'm sure you will agree with me that it's a welcome sign that the UK government is now investigating the Cynulliad directors. And I'm sure you would agree with me also that investigation probably needs to go further to the bankers who have speculatively backed the company, and indeed the government ministers who appear to have been so keen to line the pockets of the shareholders and the directors with goals, with contracts, when there were clear warnings out. But do you agree with me that the most important bit is this? We have a number of Welsh companies, many of whom actually trade in England as well, who will now potentially not be paid. They will now potentially be at risk of going under. There are workers who have had their pension funds that have also been robbed, and that we need to examine the impact on the Welsh economy of those particular companies, and in particular what support we can give. But in terms of the ethical question, isn't it the fact that we have an economic model that is basically about squeezing profits for the few, robbing the workers' pension funds and expecting the public at the end of the day to bail them out? And that is something that we could be so grateful that the Welsh Government has not gone down this particular road.
Well, so with successive Welsh governments have not been prepared to follow the model that Mick Antoniou has just outlined. We have always been alert to the dangers of a way of conducting business in which profit is privatised and risk is socialised. And that's exactly what you've seen in this example. Here is a company which, from public money, has been giving dividends to its shareholders, is prepared to go on paying its senior executives well beyond the point where that was a sensible course of action to take. And when it all goes wrong, when their friends over there go wrong, what happens? What happens then? You expect the public purse to step in. You expect the public to pay for your mistakes. And in Wales, that's a course of action we've never been prepared to follow. That's why we don't have, and won't have, in Wales, the sort of handing over to the private sector public services that ought to be publicly provided and publicly paid for. That's why we don't have fire service personnel delivering meals in school in Wales today. Yes, there are lessons to be taken from Carillion. Luckily in Wales, we'd learnt them well before the party opposite.
Janet Finch-Saunders.
Diolch Llywydd, and back to my lovely constituency of Aberconwy, and thank you for making reference to junctions 15 and 16 on the A55 and the removal of the roundabouts. Those works have been long promised by this Welsh Government, so it's understandable that now, with Carillion having gone into liquidation, that many of my constituents are asking me what's going to happen where those works are concerned. Cabinet Secretary, is there a chance that I can go back to my constituency and tell my residents, our motorists and our visitors, that you will actually look at getting on with these works? And maybe, why don't we look towards more local procurement? I cannot see why these works could not have been carried out. We have local companies in our area that could have carried out these works. But will you please look at getting on with these works? Because the hold-ups on the A55 and the terrible problems we have, Carillion has gone now into liquidation, but we still have that situation on the A55 that is really affecting our motorists and our residents. So anything you could do would really be appreciated. Thank you.
Well, I fully appreciate the points that Janet Finch-Saunders has made. Carillion was contracted in the design phase only so far of the junctions 15 and 16 of the A55, and there would have been about 12 months of that design work still to go. And the Welsh Government will look to see whether there are ways in which we can respond to these difficulties in a way that does not lead to that timetable being elongated. I mean, these are very early days, but just to give her an example of the sort of actions we will look to explore, there are subcontractors in that contract actually carrying out the work. Maybe it will be possible for one of those subcontractors to become the main contractor to carry on that work and to complete the important developments at that junction, which I know matter to her constituents and to others who use that part of the A55 without further delay. Llywydd, I ought to apologise to Russell George for failing to have answered the first part of his question. If I could very briefly say to him, there are two other contracts that we have. There is the contract at the Llandewi-Brefi section of the A40, where the design phase is more or less complete, and where we will now have to think about how we take forward the second phase of a three-phase contract. And then there was section 3 of the A465, which has been completed, which is already open, where there is a small-scale landscape contract that would have lasted for 5 years with Carillion beyond the opening of that section 3 of the Heads of the Valleys Road, where halfway through that 5-year period, we will now have to find another way of fulfilling the remaining 2.5 years. But that is the full extent of the exposure of the Welsh Government to Carillion in the contracts that the member mentioned.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd. Diolch am y datganiad ar ateb y cwestiwn heddi, ond mae rhaid dweud bod ni'n synnu glywed fod na contract wedi osod yn y gogledd ar y A55, a fod I chi sylweddoli a clywed am y newyddion ym mis Gorffennaf am statws y cwmni yma, achos dyna wrth gwrs yn union beth oedd John Trickett yn beirniadu blaid Gwydybadon amdano'n hallt iawn ddoe yn tir gyffredin, gosod contractor ar ôl canfod y problemau, neu clywed am y problemau, a tudalen y busnes y Financial Times a llefydd eraill. Felly mae'n rhaid i Llywodraeth, dwi'n meddwl, ail ystyried y ffordd maen nhw'n ymwneud nawr a gweddillion cyfeirion, ac yn ywedig beth sydd yn ymhlug yn hwn wrth y fasnachfaint a belio a cais a belio i fynd yr afael y fasnachfaint reilffordd. Ond i droi at benodol at y cwestiwn ydych chi newydd cyfeirio ato, sef gwella'r A50 wel, gawn ni'n paidio cymysgu Llanddewi, gwahanol Llanddewi, pen blewyn gawn ni ddweud. Mae abelio i fod, dim abelio, sori, cyfeilion i fod i ddechrau'r gwaith yna, a chaf yma fel o'n i'n deall pethau. A bydd na oedi nawr yn y cynllun yma, a beth yw'r camau penodol mae Llywodraeth Cymru wneud nawr i sicrhau na fydd gwaith pwysig sydd yn ei tro wrth gwrs yn arwain at digwyddiadau economaidd yn yr ardaloedd hynny yn cael ei oedi gormod lles teithwyr, ond hefyd lles datblygu economaidd Cymru.
Diolch i Simon Thomas am y cwestiynau eraill. Just to be clear, in relation to Junction 1516, the A55, that the whole business of awarding a contract had been completed before the profits warning of the 10th of July, but contract letters had not been sent out to the company. So at that point, the sending out of award letters was withheld, and a further set of investigations were carried out with Carillion PLC to determine if there were risks that needed to be identified. So there was a further period of due diligence in which formal assurances were sought and obtained from the company. And officials who were responsible for carrying out that assessment believed that the necessary assurances had been obtained. There was an equal, or there was a different risk that had the award not been made, the company itself may have sought to have had that decision reviewed, because the ordinary processes had been properly completed and they had won the contract. So there was a risk that they themselves would have sought to take action, giving rise to a further set of delays of the sort that Janet Finn-Saunders mentioned earlier, and that, understandably, local citizens would have been keen to avoid. So there was a balance of risk to be drawn up. It was very purposefully and thoroughly investigated. Turning to his point about the Llandewi Felfrey Penblewyn section of the A40, that is a three-phase contract. The first phase is more or less completed. There will be choices to be made, which the Minister responsible will now want to weigh up. In this case as well, there are substantial subcontractors involved in the scheme, and it is possible that one of them may be in a position to become the main contractor, and the advantage of that would certainly be that it would reduce delay. But the opportunity is there, if the Cabinet Secretary prefers, to go out to tender for the next phase of that contract, to see what the market has to offer and to secure the best value for Welsh public expenditure. The downside of that is that it inevitably involves delay. In the very short period of time since the Carillion collapse occurred, officials have been identifying options, and no doubt they will put advice to ministers, and ministers will then decide between them.
Diolch i'r ysgrifennydd Cabinet, a gai ymddiheurio i'r ysgrifennydd Cabinet os o'n i'n orawyddus ar un pwynt i alw'r cwestiwn nesaf. Yna'n gwbl anforiadol ar yn rhannu, mae'n drwg gen i dorri ar eich traws chi yn eich atebion y prynawn yma. Felly, reitem nesaf ar yr agenda yw cwestiynau i'r prif weinidog, a'r cwestiwn cyntaf Joyce Watson.
Diolch, Llywydd. Does the Welsh Government intend to ban wild animals in circuses in Wales?
Well, during business questions last week, the Cabinet Secretary for Energy, Planning and Rural Affairs agreed to issue a written statement on mobile animal exhibits, including circuses, before the spring half-term recess.
I thank you for that answer, First Minister. I think the whole tenure of my question leads you to believe that I think that we ought to ban wild animals from the use in circuses. And I look forward to us bringing that forward. And it is the case, of course, that England have announced that they're moving in this direction. They've only announced, let's not get carried away, with a move in this direction. But at the same time, Scotland have actually moved in this direction. So I do urge the government to send a crystal clear message to travelling circuses, because we don't have any resident circuses in Wales, that if they have wild animals on board, that they are not welcome in Wales, that it's outdated practice that needs to be stopped. So whilst we're going through the process, and I welcome the fact that we are making a move in this direction, at the same time I hope you'll send that message in the interim.
Well, it's clear, following the recent consultation on licensing of mobile animal exhibits, that there's widespread support for a ban on the use of wild animals in circuses, and officials are considering how to address this issue. It goes without saying that the way that we treat our animals is an important reflection of the values of our society. Now, the consultation closed on the 9th of October, and I know that the Minister is actively considering now the best way forward.
Paul Davies.
Diolch. Prif Weinidog, mae yna bryderon gwirioneddol bod y diffiniad arfaethedig o arddangosfeydd teithiol o anifeiliaid yn ymgynghoriad diweddar y Llywodraeth yn rhy eang ac yn peri risg unrhyw system drwyddedu neu gofrestru ddod yn ymarferol neu yn angamesur. Felly allwch chi ddweud wrthon ni siwt y bydd Llywodraeth Cymru yn mynd i'r afel a'r pryderon hyn fel bod unrhyw gynnydd ar y mater hwn yn gymesur ac yn wirioneddol yn arwain at waharddiad ar ddefnyddio anifeiliaid gwyllt mewn circuses yng Nghymru, oherwydd dyna dwi'n credu beth mae pobl yng Nghymru eisiau gweld.
Wel, bydd hwnna'n rhan o'r ystyriaeth sydd yn cael ei roi i'r mater hyn gan y gweinidog dros yr wythnosau nesaf. Ni moyn wrth gwrs i sicrhau cynllun sydd yn cael impact parhaol ar safonau lles anifeiliaid mwyn wrth gwrs sicrhau bod ni'n gwella safonau iechyd a lles anifeiliaid yma yng Nghymru.
Sian Gwenllian.
Yr hyn sy'n ymhoeni fi efo hwn ydy y galla Cymru droi yn hafan ar gyfer circuses sy'n defnyddio anifeiliaid gwyllt. Yr Alban wedi gwahardd, San Steffan falla yn mynd i wahardd Cymru ar ei hôl i fan hyn gweitha'r ffaith fod arweinydd Prydeinig eich plaid chi o blaid gwaharddiad. Felly be'n union sydd yn dal chi nôl, ac onid cangymeriad oedd cymysgu dau beth yn yr ymgynghoriad. Onid ydy hi'n yn fater syml o ddod â gwaharddiad ar anifeiliaid gwyllt mewn circuses i mewn, ac wedyn edrych ar beth sydd angen i wneud o ran yr arddangosfeydd mewn ardaloedd gwledig ac yn y blaen.
Na, fi'n credu bod beth sydd wedi cael ei wneud yn yr ymgynghoriad yn iawn, ac wrth gwrs ni moyn symud ymlaen. Dyn ni ddim moyn fod yn hafan. Gai just gweud na wrth yr aelod. Dyn ni ddim moyn fod yn hafan lle mae anifeiliaid gwyllt yn gallu dod i Gymru bod yna waharddiad yn y gwledydd eraill o dan Senedd a hyd yn oed Gweriniaeth Iwerddon. So nid hwnna yw'r bwriad. Beth ni'n ystyried nawr yw beth yw'r ffordd orau ymlaen mwyn sicrhau lles yr anifeiliaid hyn.
Cwestiwn 2, Nick Ramsey.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister outline the Welsh Government's priorities for the NHS in Monmouthshire?
Yes, our priorities for the NHS in Monmouthshire are the same as they are for the whole of Wales. We'll continue to protect investment in the health service and deliver the range of commitments set out in taking Wales forward.
First Minister, if I can ask you about dementia care, and there's deep concern in and around Chepstow at the planned closure of the purpose-built dementia ward at Chepstow Community Hospital and the relocation of services to St Wallace Hospital in Newport. And Iron Bevan Local Health Board have cited staff shortages as one of the reasons for this. This is at consultation phase at the moment. If this goes ahead, it will represent the loss of Monmouthshire's entire inpatient dementia provision and a combined reduction in provision in Newport and Monmouthshire from 29 to 14 beds. Will you urge the Health Board to reconsider these flawed plans, to protect Chepstow's hospital's valuable resources and to find a more sustainable solution to the problem the Health Board is currently facing?
Well, I am aware of the changes that have been made. I'm also aware that the Health Board has undertaken a 12-week public consultation. That's still open, and I'd encourage all views to be fed into that consultation. I'm also aware that the Health Board has discussed options for the future development of Chepstow Community Hospital and has established a working group to develop proposals for the future of the excellent local facilities. And I further understand that the Health Board is expecting an initial report to be presented in the spring.
Cwestiynau nawr gan arweinwyr y pleidiau arweinydd grŵp UKIP, Neil Hamilton.
Diolch yn fawr, Llywyd. The First Minister will agree with me that in order to secure value for money in public contracts, it's desirable that there should be a reasonable spread of credible bidders. It wasn't entirely clear to me from the answer which the Finance Secretary gave to Adam Price earlier what the legal impact is going to be of the collapse of Carillion in relation to Abellio's bid. There are only 3 bidders in the contest at the moment. If Abellio is removed from it, that means, of course, there are only 2 bids. What are the implications of this for that general principle of securing value for money by having credible competition for these big contracts? This is a contract which affects not just the Wales and Border rail franchise, but also the electrification of the Valleys lines as part of the Metro project. And this contract will be let for 15 years. So it has long-term consequences. I wonder if the First Minister could give us a little more clarification on this point.
Well, it's no secret that our preferred scenario would have been to be able to run Welsh Railways via a not-for-profit, arm's-length Welsh Government-owned business. But we were prevented from doing that by the Conservative Government in London. Happy to let Scotland do it, but as far as Wales are concerned, not happy to let... He's groaning away, the Leader of the Opposition again, not supporting this, of course, but the reality is that we were prevented from doing that. But that, nevertheless, was our preferred option. We were stopped from doing it. But he asked the question about Abellio. Transport for Wales has the appropriate expertise in place to deal with this. We're in discussions with Aelodau'r Rail Cymru about the complex situation, and it is complex, it arises from the announcement. Whilst the difficulties encountered by part of one of the consortium bidders is disappointing, it is important we remain focused on the evaluation to keep procurement on track. I can say that Transport for Wales continue to evaluate the competitive bids received whilst ensuring equality of treatment of the bidders in line with procurement law.
Well, what's happened this week, whilst it couldn't have been predicted with confidence, there was clearly a high possibility that Carillion was going to get into difficulties from which it couldn't extricate itself. After all, we had the first profit warning in July. In September, the shares in Carillion fell by 60% in 2 days. 3 weeks after that, there was another profits warning. On the 17th of November, Carillion warned that it was on course to breach its banking covenants, which must have gone to the heart of the credibility of that part of Abellio's bid. And considering they were the preferred construction partner, this obviously had immense implications for the credibility of that bid. Was there any action taken by Transport for Wales or any involvement by Welsh Government in the period after July to try to protect the bidding process against the possibility of the collapse of Carillion's bid, not Carillion, Abellio's bid? Because if Abellio had been able to obtain some other construction partner or keep one in the wings in the meantime, that might have been able to save this element of the bidding process.
I think there are dangers in Transport for Wales engaging in that way with a bidder. There has to be distance between Transport for Wales and the bidders themselves. It is a matter for Aelodau'r Rail Cymru to put themselves in a situation where they are confident that their bid can move forward, and discussions will continue along those lines in terms of how that can be done. But we know that there was a profit warning in July. I don't think, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I don't think anybody, let alone the UK government, could have known the scale of the problems within Carillion. Clearly, they were unprepared, and I think that many would have found themselves in that situation. I think that the feeling might have been that Carillion were too big to fail, but unfortunately, we know that that isn't the case. But nevertheless, we are talking about a part of one of the consortium bidders. It's a question now to see whether that part can be replaced.
Well, it's clear that the answer to my question is that both the Government and Transport for Wales sat on its hands during that period. But I'll leave that there. Does the First Minister share my sort of amusement that Philip Green, the chairman of Carillion since 2014, was an advisor on corporate responsibility to David Cameron and Theresa May as Prime Minister, that the previous chief executive of Carillion, Richard Hurson, was allowed to leave the company a few months ago with a 12-month payoff of £660,000 in salary and £28,000 in benefits, whilst the company has been making small firms wait for up to 120 days for payment on their contracts. The Welsh Government has a policy on social responsibility in companies that are contracting with it, and surely prompt payment is one of the essential elements in that. The Welsh Government has a policy of paying all invoices on time, and when the Welsh Government receives bids from firms for large contracts, which it's going to award, or agencies like Transport for Wales, what protection is going to be given to small firms who are now left, as in this instance, probably high and dry? Lots of them will not be paid, and that could be pivotal in whether the question of whether small businesses themselves, as a ricochet effect from the collapse of Carillion, also go out of business.
Cash flow is all to a small business. It's not clear yet what the extent of Carillion's collapse will be on small businesses in Wales. I know that the Cabinet Secretary is looking to obtain information on that. But of course, what we can't do is govern the way in which large businesses run themselves. There are many issues there that the Leader of UKIP has rightly highlighted. Moral issues, and it seems to me that quite often in some businesses, not all of course, not in most, that bonus payments are made regardless of performance, and also that people are paid off with substantial sums of money in order to go away even where performance is well below the standard expected. There are issues there. There are issues in terms of how empowered shareholders are. They hold, of course, the board to account, but in terms of knowledge, expertise, it's not quite as easy as that. And I think there are, as a result of what we've seen from Carillion, lessons to be learned in terms of looking again at company law and the way in which companies govern themselves. Is there sufficient governance in larger companies to ensure that this kind of situation doesn't happen? We see from Carillion that the answer to that is no.
Gwynedd Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, today's independent report on health and social care highlights the importance of staff well-being, and it says that there should be a sharp focus on staff engagement and well-being. Now, all political parties regularly praise NHS staff, and that's quite right. It's well-deserved, because without them, the NHS would be nothing. Do you think enough is being done to support the well-being of NHS staff?
Well, these are primarily for the local health boards. But again, I join with the Leader of Plaid Cymru in offering a tribute to the incredibly hard work that's been done by members of staff. I know that the Director of Health and Social Services has been around the different A&E departments around Wales, listening to their experiences. We know the situation is easing compared to what it was a few weeks ago. But yes, we'd encourage local health boards, of course, to make sure that there are the right mechanisms in place to ensure that staff feel supported beyond the words that we as politicians express.
First Minister, in recent weeks, disclosures have been made to me by workers in our NHS about serious problems with staff morale and well-being. People serving on the front line claim to be at breaking point as a result of some of the pressures that have been put upon them. Now, I've only had permission to refer one of these disclosures so far, but the person has asked me specifically to raise it with you in government. First Minister, a serious allegation is being made that at times of high demand, ambulance service prioritisation is putting people at risk. In the past few weeks, it's alleged that patients categorised as suitable for a 20-minute response have had to wait up to 6 hours for an ambulance. I'm told that these include patients who have had a stroke, heart attacks and breathing problems. The person revealing this information to me is currently off sick with stress and cannot speak about their job without breaking down into tears. First Minister, how can this situation be defended, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, of course, knowing the full facts, it's difficult to give an answer today, but There is sufficient there for me to investigate, in my mind, and I will write to the leader of Plaid Cymru, putting to the Ambulance Trust what she has said today, and when I get a response from them, I will of course share it with her.
Thank you for that, First Minister. I would urge you as well to ask your Health Secretary to assess the well-being of staff in the NHS, as the letter that I received mentions that counsellors from a charity have had to be brought in to speak with ambulance control staff, such is the level of that stress. Now, if that is true, that is a really shocking situation, and it's an emergency within our public services. Can you confirm that counselling has been offered to NHS staff? And when it comes to ambulance resources, can you assure us that prioritisation will be under review and that responding to red calls is not putting anyone classed as an amber call at risk of death or further injury?
Again, needs further investigation. If the Leader of Plaid Cymru will allow me, I will investigate those further matters as well. When the response is received, I will of course share it with them.
Gwynydd yr wrth, Blaid Andrew Arty Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the Government before Christmas brought out their new Economic Action Plan, Prosperity for All. This is the fourth action plan that the Labour Party have brought forward since devolution started. The first one, a winning Wales in 1999, a vibrant economy in 2005, and a new direction in 2009. If you actually look at the document, it doesn't offer much hope as to how the Government are actually going to increase wages here in Wales, which are significantly below other parts of the United Kingdom. In the 20 years that you've been in government here in Wales, or nearly 20 years you've been in government in Wales, GVA has only increased by 0.5%. It doesn't offer much hope as to exactly how you're going to get a real momentum behind GVA here in Wales. How can we have confidence that this document will be any different to the three predecessors that it had?
Well, first of all, if we look at unemployment is low in Wales and often lower than the UK average. In 1999, that would have been fanciful to claim that. We were perpetually above the UK average, and that is something that shows the success of what we've done to encourage business and investment. Secondly, there is a challenge in terms of increasing GVA per head. How is that done? To me, there are two ways. First of all, you ensure that when you look to secure investment, it's investment that pays highly. In the late 80s and early 1990s, the policy pursued by his party was to replace well-paid jobs in coal and steel with badly paid, unskilled jobs. And so, although the unemployment rate did not necessarily increase, GVA went down because the jobs weren't so highly paid. We saw at the end of the 90s and the early part of the last decade, many of those businesses leave Wales because they were going somewhere where wage rates were even lower. We are not prepared as a government to sell ourselves to the rest of the world on the basis that we are a cheap wage economy, which is what the Conservative government did in the early 1990s, and on the basis that come to Wales because it's cheap, no more. We see the fruits of that. We see, of course, the investment from companies like Aston Martin. We see the further investment in Airbus up in the north. We've seen investments, for example, in Pembrokeshire around the port of Milford Haven, all of which are much better paid than jobs that used to come here. That's one part of it. The second part is training. You know, the question we get asked more than any other when we speak to businesses who want to invest in Wales is, have you got the people with the skills that we need? They're not interested in cost, they're interested in skills. And increasingly we can answer that question positively. So it means working with FE colleges in terms of apprenticeships. We have our commitment to 100,000 all-age apprenticeships in the course of this assembly. It's by raising people's skill levels that we can make sure they can put more money in their pockets and thus increase GVA.
First Minister, you raised the issue about wages. If you take Scotland as an example, back in 1999, a Welsh worker and a Scottish worker took home the same take-home pay. Today, a Scottish worker takes home £49 more in the pay packet each week than a Welsh worker does. That's a fact. In this document, wages are only mentioned twice. Taxes, business taxes, are only mentioned once out of 17,000 words. Automation, which is the huge challenge we face, where potentially 35% of the workforce could lose their jobs or have their jobs remodelled over the next 20 years, has a bare mention in this document. There doesn't seem to be any answers around the real challenges that we do face in the next decade or two. And this document, I presume, is the driver for economic policy coming out of the government for at least the next 4 to 5 years, depending on the mandate.
And yet again, I go back to this point. It is the fourth document that has come out of the Welsh Labour Party in government here in Wales, and I highlighted the poverty in wages here in Wales as opposed to other parts of the United Kingdom, and this document doesn't have that solution. Give us some inspiration as to what we can look at in 2021 on wages, on wealth here in Wales, and above all, on companies re-establishing themselves here in Wales.
Well, it's already the case that we know there are challenges with automation. Indeed, my colleague Lee Waters, I think, has got a short debate in this tomorrow on automation. He is somebody who's been very keen to make sure that we look at the fourth industrial revolution, as it's described, and I know it's something that the Cabinet Secretary is very much aware of. Hope. The hope is this. Wales is a place, a destination where companies from all around the world want to come. That Wales is a place where people are seen as being innovative, as being entrepreneurial, a place where people have the skills that are needed to survive not just in the next 5 or 10 years, but beyond, to meet the challenges of automation. A place where there's not a fragmented education system, but one that works together in order to make sure that people have those skills that are required. A country where there's a government that works closely with businesses, goes out to different countries and encourages businesses to come to Wales and to invest in Wales. That's why we have the highest figure for foreign direct investment for 30 years. But also a government that understands that it's not a question of securing overseas investment, it's a question of ensuring that our SMEs continue to be established and to grow. One of the issues we face in the Welsh economy is that too many of our SMEs grow to a particular level and then sell. The owners sell to a bigger company. And there's always been that issue of how do we encourage those people to actually grow bigger, to have more companies listed on the LSE, listed on the AIM, because we're underrepresented on them, and want to grow, rather than say, well, I've done my bit now, I'm going to sell the business. We have the entrepreneurs, there's no question about it. I see it with younger people. They have a drive and a confidence that we didn't have, because we were put off it actively when I was in school. Harnessing those people, making sure they have access to business support and advice, making sure they have access to support through Finance Wales, making sure that they have the skills that are needed to prosper in the future. That's the key to the Welsh economic future that I want to see, and I believe the people of Wales want to see.
I've had it put to me that that's the ladybook analogy of what you want for the economic future, First Minister, because in fairness, there is 17,000 words in this document. I had hoped that you would have given us something firm, a roadmap which would lift Welsh wages. As I've highlighted, over the 20 years, a Scottish worker is taking home £49 more in their pay packet than a Welsh worker is taking home. GVA has increased by 0.5% over the 20 years. That is hardly a record to be proud of. I want to see Wales thrive economically, just like the picture you've painted. But I had hoped that you would have drawn something out of this document that was brought forward by the Cabinet Secretary, because this is the blueprint that you're basing your economic model on. And it doesn't offer much hope when taxes are mentioned once, when wages are mentioned twice, and automation is only mentioned 6 times. And if I could ask you on taxes in particular, do you believe that the tax environment the government is bringing forward will make Wales a more competitive tax environment to attract businesses into Wales? I've had representations brought to me by businesses on the land transfer tax, the LTT, that shows that Wales will ultimately be at a disadvantage. And I know the Cabinet Secretary for Finance has met with industry leaders on this particular issue, who are really concerned at the write-downs that businesses are going to have to put into their balance sheets because of the higher tax environment that your government is bringing forward. So do you believe that the tax environment that you will be creating here in Wales will put Wales at an advantage in attracting some of these new jobs and new enterprises that will help us tackle the automation generation that is coming our way?
Well, I think he means Lady Bird Book rather than Lady Book. I trust that is the case. But he asks the question, am I confident in the land transaction tax and the tax environment it creates? The answer to that is yes. Am I confident that what we're doing as a government adapts? He mentions the fact there were 4 different plans. Well, of course there are. If we still had the same plan from 1999, we'd be ossified in the past. In 1999, I remember Dr. Phil Williams standing up in the previous chamber and telling us all about broadband, and none of us knew what he was talking about. And he acknowledged that, in fairness to him, but he was ahead of the game. He was ahead of the game. In 1999, nobody talked about broadband. Now, of course, it's a fact of life. So we have to adapt, and the fact we've had different approaches over the last 20 years is a sign that we have adapted to make sure we deal with the different circumstances that the world throws at us. And I have to say, I am more than happy to defend our record as a government on the economy, to defend our ideas, to defend the fact that we are a proactive government. We take stakes in businesses where we believe businesses are going to be successful. We put our money where our mouth is. Where are his ideas? Where are the Welsh Conservative ideas? I have absolutely no idea what their economic policy is. And judging by the blank looks on the faces over there, their heads are all down, I don't think they do either. By all means, let's have a debate on economic ideas, but let's hear what yours are first.
Hefin David.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the ways in which health boards and local authorities can collaborate to ensure effective and joined-up working?
Well, standards can best be raised when partners work together. And this year, £60 million has been provided via the Integrated Care Fund to support health and social services to deliver a wide range of integrated services in response to their population assessments.
With the parliamentary review of health and social care in mind, I've been approached by constituents who have raised concerns about continuity of care for children moving into adulthood. And Iron Bevan University Health Board tell me they're working with their 5 local authority partners in their area to try and move towards a pooled integrated service provision. But this has proven a challenge, partly because of the range of bodies, but also because of the often difficult transition into adulthood for children requiring continuity of care. Would the First Minister therefore agree to a review of the 2012 children and young people continuing care guidance issued by the Welsh Government? I think it needs updating in the light of social care delivered by local authorities and other partners, and therefore we can then make sure that those transitioning into adulthood have a good chance of continuity of care.
Can I thank my colleague for that question? First of all, if he wishes to write to me with further details, I will look at the individual case more closely. But secondly, he asked particularly about the guidance. I can say that that process has begun. We are setting up a group to consider the provision of continuing care for children and young people and look to produce new guidance to replace the existing guidance, taking into account, of course, developments since then.
Angela Burns.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, a key finding of the parliamentary review into health and social care found that there were a plethora of national boards overseeing work programmes outside of organisational structures, and a clear recommendation was that these boards should be streamlined in order to ensure more effective delivery of public services. Notwithstanding the changes that might be coming along to health and social services, this is a concern that has arisen in other areas of public services. There's lots of reporting, not so much doing. Will you consider looking at a review to streamline the boards that we have throughout the whole of the public sector, and to ensure that the boards, the collaboration boards that we do have in place and the programme boards that we have in place are effective and do work together really well, and to get rid of those that are not, so that we can really focus on delivering the transformation we all desperately need to see?
Well, can I say, I'm aware, of course, that the review itself is a cross-party review. And I think the review deserves full consideration by all parties with a full response. What I can say to her, though, she makes the point, obviously sensibly, that we want to see borders removed. I know that the review laid out a vision of seamless health and care without artificial boundaries between primary and secondary care, health and social care, and that is entirely consistent with what we want to see as well. So getting that done is the next step in terms of considering what the review has found.
Rhina Piorwer.
Diolch Llywydd. Mi dynais i sylw'r gweinidog cabinet dros iechyd yn ddiweddar y broblem o dacsis ambulans yn cael ei canslo yn aml ar y funud ola. Wrth gwrs, rhywbeth sy'n achosi loes i gleifion sydd wedi bod yn aros tro i fynd i'r ysbyty. Mewn ateb dderbynnais i ar yr wythfed o Ionawr, mi dwedodd yr ysgrifennydd cabinet i fod o'n siomedig i glywed am y pryderon yma bod rhaglen draws newid yn cael ei gweithredu i wella'r maes yma, a bod cydweithio efo Llywodraeth leol yn rhan o'r ateb. Ond pryd allai i ddeud wrth fy etholwyr i y gallen nhw ddisgwyl gweld y rhan pwysig yma'r gwasanaeth iechyd yn cael ei sefydlogi, achos hyd yma, gweithio'r rhaglen weithredol, mae'n amlwg nad ydy o'n gweithio.
I'r ysgrifennydd cabinet sgrifennu iddo mwyn sicrhau bod ymateb llawn yn cael ei roi.
Caroline Jones.
Llywydd. First Minister, sadly we see the results when our health boards and local authorities fail to work together effectively. Patients forced to stay in hospital far longer than necessary, or patients discharged without a care package in place. First Minister, I have been contacted by numerous elderly patients and have been left to fend for themselves after being discharged from hospital. What is your government going to do to ensure that everyone who is discharged from hospital has adequate care in place during their recuperation?
Well, that shouldn't happen, of course. It's a matter for local authorities to ensure that that doesn't happen. The Integrated Care Fund is designed to ensure that the barrier between the barriers that stop people leaving hospital in order to return home are reduced and indeed removed. I can say that the latest published figures on delayed transfers of care do record a reduction of 0.7% of the number of delays across Wales compared to the October 2017 period, and that total is 6% down on the same period last year and lower than the totals reported in the equivalent period in the preceding 2 years. To me, that's a sign that the Integrated Care Fund and the money we have invested in that are having a positive effect on so many people's lives.
Cwestiwn 4, Rhina Biorwerth.
Diolch yn fawr. Rawn aeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am gyfathrebu a phobl sy'n aros am wasanaeth band eang cyflym iawn.
Mae gwybodaeth ar gyflwyno band eang cyflym iawn o dan prosiect cyflymu Cymru ar gael ar wefan Llywodraeth Cymru, a bydd darparu gwybodaeth effeithiol ar gyflwyno hyn hefyd yn ofyniad allweddol o unrhyw brosiect olynol.
Diolch, mi gysylltodd etholwr o talwrn efo fi yn ddiweddar. Nid i fod yn flin oherwydd bod ganddo fo ddim band eang cyflym iawn, ond i fod o rwan wedi ffindio allan i fod o ar gael iddo fo ers 2 misoedd, ond bod o ddim yn gwybod am y peth. Yn digwydd bod, dwi'n yr un sefyllfa, lle dwedodd cymydog wrtho fi bod ni yn gallu cael gysylltiad band eang cyflym ers cwpl o fisoedd. Rwan, mae hyn yn rhwystredig iawn i bobl sydd wedi aros yn hir, a mae o'n rhan, dwi'n meddwl, o'r diffyg cyfathrebu arffwysol sydd wedi bod rhwng Openreach a'r cyhoedd ynglyn â rollout band eang Llydan. A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog roi ymrwymiad i bwyso eto ar Openreach i roi gwybod i bobl pan mae cysylltiad ar gael, achos mae disgwyl am y cysylltiad yn digon hir, pan ydych chi'n ffeindio bod o wedi bod ar gael a chi'n ddim yn gwybod, mae'n hynod rwystredig.
Dyw e ddim wedi bod yn ddigonol, a mi oedd yna ymgyrch dros y 2 mlynedd lan i flwyddyn nesaf mwyn hybu defnydd o band eang cyflym iawn. Ond i yn ail ystyried am pa ffordd allan ni wella'r cyfathrebu mwyn sicrhau bod bobl sydd ar gwasanaeth yn gallu derbyn a gwybod bod yna. Achos wrth gwrs, mae'n un peth i sicrhau bod y strwythur yna, mae'n beth arall i sicrhau bod bobl yn gwybod bod nhw'n gallu defnyddio fe. So mae hwnna'n rhywbeth sydd wedi cael ei ddweud wrthon ni hefyd, a ni moyn ail ystyried y ffordd ni'n cyfathrebu mwyn sicrhau bod bobl yn gwybod.
Russell George.
First Minister, can I say, I think the Superfast Cymru programme has been a public communications disaster. Certainly my constituents have been repeatedly promised fibre broadband, only to be told that an upgrade will be delayed on several occasions, and now that they find that they've been left in the lurch because Openreach has run out of time. In a letter to me on the 11th of January, the Leader of the House said, and I quote in a letter, "The provision of superfast broadband connection under the Superfast Cymru project was never promised to any area or community, only scheduled." Now, that to me is a complete cop-out. Households have been promised that repeatedly that they would receive an upgrade by the end of 2017. So can I ask, what is your message to these households? What lessons have you learned? And can you give any assurance that premises who were previously in scope will now be included in any successor scheme?
Well, first of all, we're in the hands of BT in terms of the physical works that are taken forward. What I can say is I do understand that there are people who now feel because the contract has come to an end, therefore nothing else will happen. Can I say to the member that we are considering what further steps we can now take, because I understand, I've heard stories around Wales that literally structure has been left half finished as a result of the contract finishing. We're aware of that. It would seem a great shame if that were to happen. So I can say to him and his constituents that we are actively considering how best to ensure that more people are connected, and looking again at how we can help to connect many more communities and households beyond the end of the contract at the end of last year.
Lee Waters.
First Minister, because of Welsh Government investment, there's no doubt that thousands of households across the Llanelli constituency now have access to super fast broadband. But in the community of Binier, just outside Llanelli, they've been treated appallingly by BT Openreach. They were told they'd have access by the end of the year. They have appalling speeds. And just before Christmas, were told that because they've reached their target, they'd have to wait until any future successor scheme. This clearly isn't good enough. My colleague Nia Griffith held a meeting with residents and with BT on Saturday morning, and they were told they'd now have to cobble together a community bid. They are very frustrated by this. So can the Welsh Government make sure that, as it communicates the next phase, they make sure these left-behind groups are now reached and reached quickly?
Well, I can well imagine the concern, if not anger, that people in Binier feel. I think from the member's tone, this was a part of the Superfast Company contract rather than a commercial contract, over which, of course, we have no control. But it is something that we'll continue to address with BT with a view to looking again at communities that were promised or appear to be promised to have services but have not had those services delivered, with a view to delivering those services in the future. So we are very much aware that there will be communities and premises around Wales who feel that they should have had access to superfast broadband, who have not yet received it, and we are now looking at ways to try to ensure that they do receive it in the future.
Cwestiwn 5, Bethan Jenkins.
Ond y prif weinidog am Llanelli sut y gall Llywodraeth Cymru wella sicrwydd ariannol ar gyfer pobl yng Nghymru?
Wel, mae'n cynllun cyflenwi ar gyfer cynhwysiant ariannol am Llanelli yn gwaith gyda sefydliadau partner. Mae hyn yn gwella mynediad at gredyd fforddiadwy, gwasanaethau a gwybodaeth ariannol ac yn gwella galluedd ariannol yng Nghymru.
Diolch. Mae marchnad mwy eang ar gyfer undebau credyd mewn gwledydd datblygiedig eraill. Dyn ni'n edrych ar Iwerddon, 77% y flwyddyn diwetha, 50% yn yr Unol Daleithiau. Ac mae ffigurau Cymru o ran aelodaeth yn debau credyd, 69,000 o aelodau yma, a wedyn 561,000 yng Ngogledd Iwerddon yn fwy hun. Tybed a fedre Llywodraeth Cymru gwneud mwy i hylwyso datblygiad yn debau credyd yng Nghymru, o feddwl bod banciau mawr yn tynnu eu hun allan o gymunedau lleol, oes modd creu rhwydwaith cenedlaethol o undebau credyd llwyddiannus, a fydd yn gallu cymryd lle y ffaith bod y banciau yn tynnu nôl oddi wrth ein cymunedau mwyn sicrhau bod y gwasanaethau yno hyd iddyn nhw.
Wy'n cydwyn yn fawr iawn gyda beth sy'r aelod i ddweud, a gai dalu taenged iddi hi am y gwaith mae hi wedi wneud mwyn sicrhau bobl yn cael y hebsysyn nhw. A ddim, of course, mewn sefyllfa lle maen nhw'n goffod benthyg arian wrth bobl sy'n mynd i chargio lot fawr o arian nhw i fenthyg yr arian hynny. Mae yna mwy o potensial, fi'n credu, ni yn debau credyd. Mae'n wir i weid yn Iwerddon, bod nhw wedi bod yn Iwerddon llawer yn hirach na yng Nghymru hefyd, bod undebau credyd yn gallu benthyg arian mawr i gymharu â undebau credyd Cymru. Mae'n bod yn cael mor geisiau enghraifft gyda undebau credyd yn yr Iwerddon. Ynglŷn â rhwydwaith o undebau credyd, mae hwnna'n rhywbeth fi'n credu sydd werth ystyried. A na fi'n sicrhau bod y gweinidog yn cyfathrebu gyda hi mwyn sicrhau ym mha ffordd allan ni gryfhau presenoldeb undebau credyd yng nghymunedau Cymru, wrth gofio'r ffaith bod banciau yn gadael trwy gymaint o gymunedau, mwyn rhoi cyfle i bobl i rheoli i bywydau ariannol mewn ffordd sydd yn dda i nhw.
Mark Isherwood.
Although children who gain experience of budgeting, spending and saving from early age are more likely to be able to manage their finances as they take on financial responsibilities as they grow older, research from the Money Advice Service on the financial capability of children, young people and parents in Wales, launched during last November's Financial Capability Week, found that many young people about to turn 18 in Wales are ill-prepared for dealing with adult financial responsibilities, that just 35% of children between 7 and 17 had learned about money management in school, and only 7% had talked to their teachers about money. Will you therefore encourage your government to revisit the recommendations of the 2010 Communities and Culture Committee report on financial inclusion and the impact of financial education, which make clear recommendations in these areas? And can you also confirm what role, if any, the Welsh Government will be taking in UK Government proposals for a breathing space scheme to provide individuals in debt with up to 6 weeks free from interest charges and enforcement, to give them time to seek financial advice, hopefully, and I'll declare an interest from independent third sector bodies such as those two of my daughters work for, providing this impartial advice to people.
Firstly, I agree entirely with him about the need for young people to be financially educated. I think part of the problem is that money, despite what happened in 2008, still appears to be freely available in a way that it wasn't when I was younger, when loans were not as freely available as they are now. In the days when my first car loan carried an interest rate of 29%. I remember that very vividly and painfully. And for many people, they find it very difficult to manage. They've not been shown how to manage. Sometimes people learn through their families. Sometimes people don't have that ability to learn and don't have an example that they can follow. It is part, I understand, of the curriculum, of the new curriculum, so that it will be there to enable young people to be able to manage help them to manage their finances in the future, because the point is well made. How do you, as a youngster, cope with all the quite often money is being thrown at you, or debts thrown at you for many, many people, without any kind of help available to you? That point is well made, and it's included in the curriculum. In terms of the issue of breathing space, I know this is something that has been raised. It is something that we need to consider as to how if we look to take it forward, how we take it forward, whether it's on a Wales basis or working with other countries in the UK. But to my mind, anything that enables people to have a respite from debt, and particularly continuing debt that people often find on their shoulders, must be a welcome thing.
Cwestiwn 6. O na, mae'n ddrwg gen i. Rhiannon Pasmo.
First Minister, following the Tory UK Government's hollow budget at the end of last year, the Welsh Government's budget will be once again lower in real terms in 2019-20 than it was in 2010-11. The Welsh Labour Government has repeatedly asserted that for the Welsh economy to grow, which will consequently improve the financial security for the Welsh people, it is critically important that the UK Government commit to important infrastructure projects in Wales. First Minister, what representations and actions have the Welsh Government made to ensure projects like the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon, electrification of the London-Paddington to Swansea railway line, and the much-needed further investment in our railway infrastructure become a reality?
Well, we've made representations very strongly. We get 1.5% of railway infrastructure investment. 1.5%. We have more than, on a balance share, it will be over 6%, but that's not what we get. And still, the UK Government refused to devolve railway infrastructure plus a balance share of that spending to us. We still have no decision on the Tidal Lagoon. We made the point last week. We have put our cards on the table as a Welsh Government. We have said that we are prepared to make a financial contribution, take a stake in the lagoon. We make no apologies for that. Silence as far as the UK Government is concerned. Silence from the Conservative benches. Silence from the Conservative benches. This is a major project. This is a major project that needs a decision. 12 months have gone by since the review that was put in place to assess whether this project should go ahead. It said the project should go ahead. Still, we have no response at all. It is... I'm being told by Dana, my attitude doesn't help as if I was a schoolboy. I'm the First Minister of Wales. I've got every opportunity and right to represent the people of Wales with regard to the UK Government. The UK Government isn't actually making progress. And I'm sorry, we have had 12 months of reasonableness and nothing has been delivered. It is about time that we saw the commitment from the UK Government that the Welsh Government has made, and a commitment that is made to creating up to 1,000 jobs in Wales and a sustainable green energy sector. We stand ready to work with the UK Government, but we need the UK Government and the Welsh Conservative Party to be vocal in support of the lagoon.
Nawr cwestiwn 6, Lian Wood.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the use of public space protection orders in Wales?
Well, public spaces protection orders are a matter for local authorities.
Labour-controlled Newport Council are seeking to amend their public space protection order to include a blanket no begging restriction as part of a crackdown on aggressive or intimidating begging. It's the view of homelessness charity Woolwich that aggressive begging is already prohibited under the existing PSPO, and that shifting begging off the streets will only make it harder to provide support for those people who need help with homelessness services. Although the hands of the Welsh Government are tied in terms of preventing local authorities from imposing these restrictions, can you please give us your view on such blanket bans on begging? And can you issue guidance to local authorities urging them to seek a much more compassionate response?
One of the things I noticed in the late 80s when I first went to London was that there were people begging on the streets, numbers of them. And I remember thinking, oh, I wouldn't like to see this in Wales. But it happened in the 90s, and it's still there now, as we know. At the end of the Second World War, begging largely disappeared from the streets of the UK. It re-emerged under a Tory government in the 80s and 90s. From my perspective, I think there are two issues here. First of all, there is no doubt that many people find aggressive begging intimidating. But the answer is not simply to say, well, just get rid of them, that's the end of it. Because there has to be a twin-track approach. Yes, people don't want to, many people do feel that they don't want to see people begging on the street, but there has to be an alternative where people can go, where people don't feel that they have to beg, where people get the support that they need, where they're given a roof over their heads and get that support. We're not in the days of the Vagrants Act, where people were effectively criminalised because they were homeless. It does need a compassionate approach. She is right, and that means ensuring that where there are plans to deal with the issue of begging on the streets, that there are places people can go in order that they feel they don't have to do that in the first place.
John Griffiths.
Mr Minister, for the reasons that you've mentioned and others, we do have a worrying level of rough sleeping and begging on our streets, and I think that's been very visible and noticeable to all of us and the public in general. We do need constructive responses. So I wonder if you would agree with me that Newport Bid, representing city centre traders and businesses in Newport, together with partners such as Newport City Council, are providing that sort of thinking in looking at a diverted giving scheme, which is proposed at the moment, which would involve people donating to participating shops rather than giving to those begging on the streets, with that money then going to provide additional services and support. I wonder if you would join me in welcoming that proposed initiative in Newport as a way of dealing with the very practical issues and making sure that vulnerable people are better supported.
Well, it's an example of what I was saying. I thank my friend for the question. It's an example of what I was saying earlier on. This is not a question of Newport saying, we're going to get rid of beggars. It's a question of saying, look, is there a better way, a more humane way of helping people? And that's exactly what you said. People donating money to organisations, I think, such as the Woolwich as well, to help people who are homeless, to create a fund of money for organisations that can help individuals. And that, to me, represents a very effective way of dealing with what can be public concerns, expressed to me, but also dealing with individuals who are at risk in a humane way.
Question 7, Mohammed Ashgar.
Presiding Officer, how does the Welsh Government ensure that the local authorities in Wales have sufficient land available to meet the demand for new housing developments, please?
Well, the planning system plays a vital role in the delivery of new homes by identifying the land necessary to meet the housing requirements of communities, which are determined by local planning authorities in their local development plans.
Thank you for the answer. First Minister, the Welsh Government requires local planning authorities to maintain a 5-year housing land supply to meet local demand for housing and to monitor this on an annual basis. However, Caerphilly Council's local department plan has failed to ensure sufficient deliverable land has been made available to meet the needs they have identified for their local communities. Caerphilly housing land supply position is being hampered by their failure to make progress in replacing their LDP following a review which began in 2013. What action will the First Minister take to ensure that Caerphilly Council meet the requirements regarding housing land supply set by his own government?
Well, first of all, it's important that local authorities do have a 5-year supply of land. Secondly, it's important to have an up-to-date LDP because the alternative is a free-for-all, and that's something that all local authorities will want to avoid. That said, I have to say it is hugely important that Caerphilly and other authorities are able to work together to bring forward strategic development plans. Because it is an artificial divide to say, well, you know, anybody who wants to live in Caerphilly has to work in Caerphilly, or that somehow people don't work in Cardiff from RCT or vice versa. The reality is that housing demand is not determined by local authority boundaries. And so I do want to see, and I know it's something that is felt strongly by members who represent constituencies where there's pressure on housing, to see local authorities working together and saying, look, the reality is, you know, Cardiff, Caerphilly, Newport, RCT, just to give some examples, they're part of a similar urban area. Housing demand will be the same in all local authorities. So it does make sense then to work together to deliver a strategic solution to housing demand, rather than, as has historically been the case, simply looking at demand in one local authority area. That doesn't represent economic reality, and it's hugely important that the local authorities, as they have been given in the Planning Act, are given the flexibility to work together to deliver housing solutions outside of their own boundaries.
Cwestiwn 8, Dawn Bowden.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the 21st Century Schools Investments Programme in Merthyr Tydfil and Rumney?
Well, Merthyr Tydfil Local Authority has £19 million earmarked for Band A of the 21st Century Schools and Education Programme in the 5 years to 2019. The Caerphilly Authority, which of course she represents part of, has £56.5 million, of which over £8 million is earmarked for Rumney. And further investment is planned from 2019 when Band B begins.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. And I recently had the great pleasure of officially opening the new build and refurbished buildings at Ysgol Afon Taf in my constituency, and I saw at first hand the benefits of the investments by the Welsh Government in the future of young learners there, and I'm sure you would agree that such a development shows the clear benefits of our capital investment in education. Would you therefore agree with me that the new administration in Merthyr Tydfil Council needs to build on this record of success, and that a decisive and objective decision now needs to be made about the new school investment proposed for Ysgol y Graig in Cefn Coed, so that future funding of this project is not put at risk?
Well, very good work has been done in Merthyr in terms of, she mentions of course Ysgol Afon Taf. I was there, of course, to open the new college in Merthyr as well, a substantial improvement on the old building. And it is hugely important that local authorities continue the momentum that has been established in order to see schools replaced and refurbished across Wales. And again, hugely important that decisions are taken in good time so as not to jeopardise funding. That's in nobody's interest for that to happen.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog. Yr eitem nesaf felly yw'r datganiad